You mentioned the Gemara with in a place where Hashem's greatness is, it mentions humility. We say that on Motzi Shabbos. Motzi Shabbos is the time all the tefillahs and the extra tefillahs we say on Motzi Shabbos is to take the Kedusha of Shabbos and bring it into the week. That's why that's said over there. So I want to share with you an idea. Why did I pick this topic? I don't know. It's actually when Mike invited me 2-3 weeks ago, we talked. So I'm making a big siyum on Maseches Brachos tomorrow night, B'ezrat Hashem. So I wasn't sure if Monday night would work, but in the end, B'ezrat Hashem, it should be fine. And for me, it's quite a big siyum because we did Aliyah about 1.5 years ago, first time. And when I came, there was 3 Avrechim that told me that we'll start the kollel before you come. Pesach time, they started learning more brachos, and I did a Zoom share with them once a week for 3-4 weeks until I came. And tomorrow night is the siyum on Maseches Brachos, which you've learned now in a year and a half. So I'm taking a topic that talked to me, if you want, during that session, and I thought that you would all gain from it. B'ezrat Hashem, I also did this once, I'm teaching one sem in Yerushalayim, and I did this with them, and they very much enjoyed it. So, B'ezrat Hashem. I'm not going to be able to go through everything. Obviously, I'm going to ask a whole lot of questions and try and paint a picture with you. Benching is something we do all the time. And I don't know if you've ever thought of, there's a number of very basic questions that you should ask when you bench. And it's a Torah obligation to bench after one has eaten bread. And the Torah says that you need to have 3 concepts mentioned in the benching. It's a Gemara in Brachos, Daf Mem Tes Amud Beis. The Gemara gives Omer Rav Nachman. May I read the Gemara with you? Mem Tes Amud Beis. Omer Rav Nachman. Said Rav Nachman. Meches Amud Beis. Sorry. Omer Rav Nachman. Moshe Tiken Yisrael Birkas Hazon. Moshe Rabbeinu was mataka in the first bracha of benching. The concept has to be mentioned in our benching, B'shah Yored Lehem Mon. When the Mon came down, that's when Moshe was mataka and enacted the first bracha of benching. Yeshua Tikkun Lehem Birkas Haaretz. The second bracha, which discusses Eretz Yisrael, Yeshua enacted it when Kivin Shenichnasu La'aretz, when he came into Eretz Yisrael. That's when he enacted the second bracha. David Shlomo Tiknu B'nei Yerushalayim. The third bracha, which discusses Yerushalayim and the Beis Mikdash, David Tiken al Yisrael Amcha, al Yisrael Amecha, al Yerushalayim Merecha. But Shlomo Tiken, Shlomo Melech was metaken al Bayis Agodav Agodash, the actual Beis Mikdash. So those are the 3. I'm saying now what I hope you all heard before is that the first bracha of benching, these 3 are Doraisa. The first one discusses Hashem giving food generally. Moshe set it up when we received the Mon. Number 2 is Eretz Yisrael. Number 3 is Yerushalayim, Klal Yisrael, Yerushalayim, and the Beis Mikdash. And then the 4th bracha, Atova Meitiv, which is originally only the actual words Atova Meitiv. Subsequent to that, there was the way we have it now was slowly added. And Beyavne Tiknu Kenega Haruge Beita. After Beita was destroyed, and with Bar Kochva revolt, so the bodies, they were not allowed to bury them, and they survived for 7 years. They did not decompose, and at the end of the 7 years, the permission was given for them to be buried. And on that day, they enacted the bracha Tova Meitiv, Atov Shlo Yisrichu. Hashem is good in the fact that the bodies didn't decompose for those 7 years. Va'Meitiv Shenitnu L'Kfura, and the fact that Hashem was good to us in the fact that He allowed us to bury the bodies. Okay, that's the 4 brachas of benching, which everyone knows. And then we add a whole lot of rachamans, which may we forget to be able to explain. If I'm not clear, please ask. Okay, so I'll ask you a number of questions, and as I say, B'ezrat Hashem, as the time allows, we're trying to answer as much as we can. It's an amazing thing. After I eat bread, I need to go through my entire history. I need to talk about food. I need to talk about Eretz Yisrael. What's Eretz Yisrael got to do with the fact that I ate bread? And not only Eretz Yisrael, in the bracha of Eretz Yisrael, I need to talk about bris, Torah, There's a whole lot of other things mentioned, and if I don't mention Bris or Torah, I'm not yotzim my benching. I need to talk about Eretz Yisrael itself, and then I need to talk about the Beis Mikdash. And because we're living in Eretz Yisrael, but why do I need to mention that as part of my benching, right? And what is so special about the fact that the bodies were given didn't decompose, and permission was given for them to be buried after 7 years, that we have in a brocha enacted. And we need to say that every single time we bench, right? Every single time we bench. More than that, on a Shabbos, we need to mention Shabbos, right? We've got a special edition on Shabbos. And then if you ever noticed before, and if we'll get to this, I'll ask the question. It's a rather strange. We ask Hashem to bring us to the resting, and we say that according to your Ratzon, we say that Hashem should not give us any hardships, any tzara, any worries on the day of our rest. That makes sense. We make an acknowledgement in the fact on Shabbos that we are restful, and then we say as part of the edition for Shabbos, we daven for the rebuilding of Tzion on Shabbos. We just davened it for in the bracha. Why do we need to add this into Ritzei of Shabbos? And the last question, which I will Bezrat Hashem, hopefully we will answer. I'm sure you've all seen, I hope you've all seen in the Siddur, it's Mefurish Gemara, later on in the same Perek and Brachos, if a person forgets Ritzei. So if it's the first 2 meals of Shabbos, you have to repeat benching. But if you forget Ritzei, and you remember after you've said Bonei Rachamav Yerushalayim, Amen, before you've started the next bracha, bracha to Hashem Akel Avinu, the bracha to Ametiv, if you remember that you forgot Ritzei or Ya'alev Yavo on Yom Tov, in between Yerushalayim, Amen, and the next bracha, so then, you don't know? What do you do? If you forget Ritzei or Ya'alev Yavoy, but you remember, in other words, you forget to say it. You say Uvenei Shalaim, Bracha to Hashem, Bonei Rachamav Yerushalayim, Amen. But you remember before you start the next bracha. There's a special bracha that you say. Right? And it's an art scroll siddur just after benching. Special bracha that you say. If you finish benching, you have to go back to the beginning. But if you remembered at that point in time, you add in another bracha on Shabbos. Bracha to Hashem Melech Olam Asher Nosan Shabbosis L'Menucha L'Amo Yisrael Be'avo L'Ois L'Bris Bracha to Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos. I don't know if anyone said that before because you never forget it, right? But if you remember exactly at that point in time, so then you add in a bracha for Shabbos, for Yom Tov, for Rosh Chodesh, only when you forget, but you remember at the right time. What a strange halacha. We got a new bracha, when you forget Ritzei, but you remember before the next piece. And ask another question, since we not so far from Purim and not so far from Chanukah, there's a similar type halacha. That if a person forgets ala nisim, if you forget to say ala nisim in your benching, so you don't have to repeat benching, because on Chanukah and Purim, you're not obligated for the meal as such. But if you forget ala nisim, there is something you can add in afterwards. Near the end of benching, there's a special harachaman you can add in, right? That happens to me at least once a year. But you forget, you add in a special harachaman, you can put ala nisim at the end. Everyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah? Put it at the end. But it's the only time that you say, haracham, listen to the words carefully, harachman hu yaseh lanu nisim v'liflois. We ask Hashem to do for us miracles and wonders like He did for our forefathers in these days. There's 2 places, as far as I know, that you actually daven for miracles. And this is one of them. Other places in Birkas Kohanim, you'll have to give me a different time to explain why it's in Birkas Kohanim. On Yom Tov, in the edition 3rd tefillah that you do, if you look over there, there's another time we daven for miracles. But here we daven for miracles. Only when I forget to say ala nisim on Chanukah and Purim, I add in that are daven for miracles. I remember I learned in Gateshead many years ago, Mr. Solomon Zatzal used to say, it's almost worthwhile forgetting, but you're not allowed to. Halachically, you're not allowed to forget. But if you do forget, you can daven for a miracle. So a lot of problems here with benching, right? We need to work out how the structure, how it is. Why did Chazal set up that there's so much that needs to be put into that of benching? So, Bezrat Hashem, in the time that we have, we're not going to finish everything, but I'll try to get basic setup, Bezrat Hashem, of how the benching looks. So, coming back to the Gemara says in the beginning, in the Brochas Memches, Moshe Tikkun Yisrael Birkas Hazon, B'shosh Yorod Lehem Mon. That when the Mon came down, when the manna came down, which we learned about a week and a half ago in Parshas Beshalach, and we ate from the Mon throughout the 40 years that we're in the desert. Moshe Benel's Mataka and Birkas Hazon when he came down. Just Agav, I'll tell you, the Chazon Ish asks an amazing question. The question is much better than the answer. Phenomenal question. Says the Chazon Ish, there's a halacha which we all know that you can only bench if you're still full from the meal. If it's been too long that you're no longer full from the meal, then you can't bench, right? If it's been over 72 minutes, or if you had a big meal, maybe 2 hours. But after an hour and a half, 2 hours, basically for any meal, if you forget to bench, you cannot bench anymore. Says the Chazon Ish, since we know that the manna, was nivla be'evorim, was absorbed into the system, how could we ever bench? You have a question? It's brilliant. Because the way we always understood until I told you this Chazon Ish, is that you always thought that you, just like we eat a steak and we're stuffed, we're full. So too, they also ate the mon, and they could taste whatever taste they wanted, right? And they were also full. And then just like the body needs to go through a digestive process until it becomes part of the system, just in the desert, we didn't have any waste product. Well, today we do have. And Chazon Ish understood it's not like that. As they ate, it became part of the system. There was no process that was needed for digestion. Amazing. So ask the Chazon Ish, how could you bench in the desert? What was Moshe Rabbeinu ben Mataken enacting? If as you ate the food, it was gone, was inside the system. So his answer is, if you bench immediately, it's connected to the benching. Right? If you bench, and that brought me also to a whole discussion, exactly the wording itself of benching. So Moshe Rabbeinu set it up. If you noticed, the first bracha is very different to the second and third. The first bracha is more like in third person. We praise Hashem who sustains the entire world with chayin, chesed, rachamim, and he gives bread to. We talk about it in a very general sense of the food coming down, because the manna was the source of how the food, of all food, in fact, they came down into this world, and that's how we talk about it in a very general wording, as opposed to the second and third bracha. We thank you, Hashem, for giving us the land. It's in second person. Moshe Rabbeinu set it up, and it's an acknowledgement of food, because over there in the desert there wasn't as much. The food was more the general food that we ate, and I'll tell you, it's not really, but off topic here. But the mon, when the mon was called man. Why? Why was it called? They didn't know what it was. Have you been to a country you don't know what the food is, and someone asks you? I always give the example in South Africa. We get beautiful grenadillas, passion fruits, I think they call it, right? So you arrive in a new country and you ask someone, you've never seen this fruit before. So you ask someone, what is this fruit? So they'll tell you, it's a grenadilla. So then when your friend arrives and he says, what is this fruit? What are you going to tell him? I don't know what it is. No, you're going to tell him it's a grenadilla. How can for 40 years you say, I don't know what it is? You have a question? How for 40 years can you name something, mon, because you don't know what it is? It meant that you never actually knew what it was. Because the mon, the Ramban says, in Parashat Beshalach, was ziv hashchina sheniskashem, was actually the spiritual shine, light, splendor of Hashem that had congealed into a physical form. Do you know what that looks like? So they also didn't know what it looked like. When they saw it on the ground, as the Pasuk says, they looked at it and they said, what's this? So they said, well, that's your food. But that's what you had to eat. That's the shoresh That's the root of all foods. Reb Tzadok HaKohen, who lived about 250 years ago, he says something phenomenal. How did they taste whatever taste they wanted to taste in the morning? Listen to me carefully. If you have a steak and you have your potato with the steak, or you have fish, so every food that's in front of you has a different taste and a different texture, and it's a different food. The shoresh, the source of all of those foods, are in one place, up there. And up there, they're not separate. They're one reality. At Yetzias Mitzrayim, when we were taken out of Egypt, each of these things need to explain, but I'll give you an example. Moshe Zatzal, if you've heard of him, he used to say that this is the understanding. When we came out of Egypt, so Hashem revealed His holy name, Yud Kei Vov Kei, a Yud and a Hey and a Vov and a Hey, when He took us out of Egypt. That's the name of Havaya, of essence, of creation, where everything emanates from. It's hard to do a one-time share because there's a lot of concepts, and I know I speak deep. It's the second year already when I teach at the SEM. The first share, which I give them, which I think is very good. Whenever I test them about 6 months later, no one even remembers they even spoke about it, because it takes time to get used to my language and the way. So when Hashem took us out of Egypt, when He brought, for example, the first makkah, the first of the 10 plagues, which was blood and water, Hashem revealed that blood and water are from the same place, the same entity. By Hashem, up there, call it that, it's all one unit, it's all one reality. So when your grandchildren come home and they've got the picture, like the glass, and there's 2 straws, and the ones with the red and the ones with the blue, and the Egyptian is drinking the red one, right? So that's what you learn in nursery school, but it's not true. The truth is they were both the same color, the same liquid, and the same texture. The Yid drank water and the Egyptian drank blood. How does it make sense? Don't know. But in that world, the unit is the same thing. Oh, he says Shalom Bim Roma, when Hashem created heaven and earth. So there's fire and water. They work together. In the plague of Borod, in hail, was the fire inside and the water outside, or the fire outside and the water inside? Depends on which the nursery teacher was, right? It's not true. It was both at the same time in the same reality. It worked together. What does that mean? No idea. But that reality was at the time. The mon was the same thing. If you wanted to taste something, you had to think, you had to connect, you have to come to the shoresh, to where the taste emanates from, and you connect to that through a power of thought, and you could taste whatever you want. It's the shoresh of all foods. Therefore, the first bracha that Moshe Rabbeinu enacted was because the mon came down, and it's about all food. And it's a tremendous chesed that Hashem has given to us, that we were able to eat that food, and we thank Hashem for the food. The second and third bracha. Second bracha is about Eretz Yisrael, and the third bracha is about Yerushalayim. So we thank Hashem. Maybe I should have told everyone to bring, but I'm sure you've mentioned many times, so you'll remember the words. Rabbi Yonah says something amazing. Because we're told to talk about Eretz Yisrael, and we're talking about the Holy Land, we need to mention, for our Zionists over here, every single time you talk about Eretz Yisrael, you need to say Eretz Chemda Tova Urachava. It's an amazing thing. You need to talk about the desired land, the good land, the wide land. There's no clear source for those 3 words. It's because you mentioned Eretz Yisrael, I need to talk about good things about Eretz Yisrael. When I'm talking about Eretz Yisrael, it's Eretz Chemda Tova Urachava. Yes. But I also talk about that Hashem took us out of Egypt, and He took us out of slavery, and the fact that Hashem gave us a bris and gave us Torah. Fascinating thought. If you think, how do you keep your neshama inside your body? I would think to fast. Think about it. How do you keep your neshama inside your body? By eating food? The neshamas ruchni, spiritual. Your body is physical. So for the neshama to stay alive, it needs to learn Torah. It doesn't need to eat. But how do you keep your neshama inside your body? By eating food. Right? By eating food. But food itself, lo ala lechem levada yichei adam ki al kol moitzi pi Hashem yichei adam. The pasuk says in Parshas Akev that it's not only on the lechem that a person lives, but it's also on the pi Hashem, the mouth of Hashem. Every food has both physical and spiritual part to it. And when you eat food, fascinating action, when you eat food, you're keeping your neshama inside your guf. In fact, the same place that you speak from, which is an expression of neshama through the body, is the same place that you eat from. Eat, right? That's in the spiritual mepsore echsai loika, from the spiritual layout of a person. The head is the more spiritual side. The body is the more physical. The part that joins the spiritual and the physical is the neck. In the world, there's also something that joins the physical and spiritual. When Yosef and Binyamin met each other, Yosef cried on Binyamin's neck, and Binyamin cried on Yosef's neck. Says Rashi, why? No. Beis Hamikdash. Beis Hamikdash is the neck that connects. But where do we talk from? The mouth. But where's the voice emanate from? The throat, the neck. It's a place of connection. That's where you eat. When you eat food, you're creating a place of connection, of unit coming together. The first bracha of Bensching talks about the food, where the source of all food comes down into our world down here. Now I need to talk about, in a broader spectrum, the reality that happens when I eat my primary food. Always, only until recently has it changed, but always the staple diet, the basic setup of all food was bread, was lechem. Right? And that's why Chazal enacted that you have to wash. Bread is the way that you basically stay alive. Bread is the way that you basically keep your neshama inside your body. And therefore, when we bench and we thank Hashem and acknowledge that we are alive and we're living in this world, we need to talk or thank Hashem for all those parts of the connection of the spiritual inside the physical. Of the spiritual inside the physical. And the place that that we live in, that the spiritual is seen in a much more, open way, is Eretz Yisrael. That's a place that is the spiritual side of the physical world, as we know. This is the Mokum. And therefore we thank Hashem as an extension of the food that we're eating, that Hashem has given us Eretz Yisrael. We talk about the wonderful land, but we also talk about the bris, the covenant, and the Torah. That's our relationship. That's our connection. That's how we working with Hashem. Hashem has given us the food, and we're eating the food to stay alive. We're recognizing that all of this is part of the world that we live in, and we thank Hashem for that as being part of it. As an extension for that, you can hear now as well, Yerushalayim is also, as we just said, the Beis Hamikdash itself is the throat, is the neck, is the actual connection between the spiritual and the physical. So, as a third bracha of benching, we talk about Yisrael Amecha, Yisrael Merecha. We talk about Klal Yisrael, the fact that, we're not physical. Klal Yisrael is not physical, as Mark Twain and as many even non-Jewish historians have seen. We're still around, right? The rest of the world slowly comes and goes, and Klal Yisrael is still here. So we might have physical bodies and look as if we're physical in this world, but we're not physical. We function different to the rest of the world, and that has to be posher to us as not only our spiritual part, our physical bodies are also different to the nations of the world. It's always good to say something controversial, even the first time you're meeting me. The Chassam Sofer says, the Gemara talks about that a girl under the age of 12 cannot have any children. Oh, but you look around, there are 8, 9-year-olds that do have children. Says the Chassam Sofer, that's by the Goyim, not by the Yidden. You can say whatever you want, you can test, but that's tests. If you test a Goy, that's nothing to do with the Yid. The body of a Yid is a different body than that of the Goy. Where was that created from? The mon that we ate in the desert. When you learn Torah and you hear Torah, Torah is absorbed into your physical being. The ability for that to happen is because you ate the mon. because the Mon was a spiritual Ziv Hashchina, was the spiritual shine of Hashem Shechina that had congealed, that's the right word, into a physical form. And when you ate it, your body slowly transformed into a spiritual being. Now we can hear Torah, and Torah can be absorbed, again, not only into our mind, but into our bodies. Because we function, our physical bodies are spiritual. Our physical bodies are spiritual. We're functioning and the source of that is the mon that we ate. So every time we eat bread, we need to acknowledge that yes, we're physical, but we're not physical. We're part of Hashem's world, and we're actually spiritual beings in the physical world. We thank Hashem for that setup, which was created by the Mon. We thank Hashem for Eretz Yisrael, that we're living in a land that Hashem's Shechina is found in the land. And then we even thank Hashem about the fact that we've got Yerushalayim, and we've got Zion, and we daven that the Beis Hamikdash should be built as well, as part of that Nusach, because that's the place that Hashem's Shechina is in our world down here. That we live in the physical world, and Hashem's Shechina, again, is part of how our world functions down here. Now, I think you can start hearing. After the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, or in fact it began after the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we thought that it was all over. As it says in Cheskel Hanavi, Klal Yisrael came to Cheskel and it said, Isha shegirish bailo, Eved shegirish odon, if a husband divorces a wife, if the master sends away the Eved, there's no more relationship. It's over. Hashem is not with us anymore. He sent us out. Cheskel said Cheskel Hanavi said, Akshpochu is still here. Second Beis Hamikdash, that's the story of Purim. Second Beis Hamikdash was built. When the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we really thought that was all over. And now, we're dead. And there's no more life force inside us. When, as we know from history, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai requested that Yavne v'chachamea, that Yavne should remain, that even though when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai met the upcoming Caesar, and he told him that he's about to become the ruler of Rome, so when he did become, he said to him, I'll give you whatever you want. He was scared to ask for the Beis Hamikdash. He said, give me Yavne. Yavne was the last remnant of Klal Yisrael. The Sanhedrin moved to Yavne. The leadership of Klal Yisrael moved to Yavne. Yavne had a Chachamim, and during 2-3 generations later was Bar Kochva, who Rabbi Kiva v'Kol Chachmei Yisrael declared as Mashiach. That needs its own share. He wasn't wrong. It wasn't wrong because Rabbi Kiva says it's Mashiach. It was Mashiach. The problem was that just like the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Shem Mashiach was destroyed. But I need time to explain that concept. But when Bar Kochva, who was the last hope after the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and Yavne continued, and Chazal and the Chachamim and the leadership was still there. When the leadership under Bar Kochva went to war, and Bar Kochva was killed, and Beitar, which became the place that they were fortified city that they tried to protect themselves in, when that was wiped out, that was seen from our perspective as if it's all over. There's no more spiritual world in the physical world that we exist in. There's no more spiritual world in the physical world that we live in. The fact that the bodies did not decompose, and the fact that after 7 years we were given permission for the bodies to be buried, meant that the spiritual world was still alive, even in our dead bodies. Hashem is still there. I found the Lashon of the Rosh. It's not in the other places, and in fact the Mefarshim say that it's not in the actual Yerushalmi, but the Rosh brings down a medrash on this Gemara. I'm sorry for the gory details, but it just brings out the point. It's profound. The Rosh says, because the wording of Chazal is that the enemies used the bodies. Rahman Itzlan is not so far off but the enemies used the bodies to fertilize the vineyards. And the wording of the Chazal is that for 7 years they moved the bodies around to fertilize their vineyards. That means that their bodies were pumping blood for 7 years after they were killed. What does that mean? Hashem was still there. Yes, there was a destruction, And yes, we went into Golus, and yes, it was very harsh, but at the same time, Hashem was showing that He's still alive within us. And that's the bracha that we say that in Bensching, in the exact place that we talk about that Hashem is alive within us, that the bodies did not decompose for 7 years, and that afterwards the burial was given. That even though it looked as if it was wiped out and the bodies were dead, but blood was still pumping. Hashem showed that He's still alive within us. There's still energy, there's still life within how we function. Everyone follow me up to there? That's the setup of benching. That's the signon, and that's why I understand why. So there are more simpler and different ways of understanding. That's why I understand the setup of why Chazal wanted us to mention all of these things and to go through all of this picture. Then we bench. We expressing, describing. We're going through who we are, our essence. When we stay alive by eating bread, our staple diet, we need to define. We need to discuss the fact that the mon was our source, and as we said it in third person. Hashem gave us life. Number two, that Jew Hashem has given us Eretz Yisrael, the place in which the Shekhinah is in the land. And number three, the base Klal Yisrael, the Yerushalayim, and the base Mikdash, the Mokum that the Shekhinah is again inside this world, right? Inside as part of us. An expression of that, another expression of that is Shabbos and Yom Tov. Shabbos Yom Tov is the same thing. Shabbos is when we're in this world and we're in the physical world. But we all know when we eat our food on Shabbos and we eat, we're bringing spirituality into, they all say that you don't put on weight on Shabbos. Does that work? So the concept is true. The concept is true even if practically it doesn't work. Because the reason why I don't put on weight is because you're actually eating spiritual food, even though you're eating physical food. Because on Shabbos is a time that I enter into Hashem's world. Now, I'll give you, this is not our topic now, but ask you a question. I've got a mahalach that takes you through Kabbalah Shabbos and stuff. Lecha Doidi, which is a song we're all familiar with. Ever counted how many stanzas there are? But you all know it well, right? No, close. There's 9. But let me ask you, how many discuss Shabbos? Because we're discussing Shabbos, right? First one, Zocha v'Shamor. Second one, Likras Shabbos. Last one, Boi v'Shalom. The middle 6 don't mention Shabbos. What do they talk about? Beis HaMikdash. Unbelievable. Middle 6 stanzas, the majority of Lecha Doidi doesn't discuss Shabbos. You ever notice that? No, you're busy singing, right? You're normally so tired at that point in time, right, that you don't really notice. Because your Neshama Sarah is coming in, that's why you're so tired. But that's a different topic. But why do you discuss the Beis HaMikdash when you're discussing Shabbos? So listen to me carefully. What the Beis HaMikdash is in space, Shabbos is in time. What Shabbos is in time, Beis HaMikdash is in space. Meaning, just like the Beis HaMikdash is the neck, is the bridge, is the connection from the physical world into the spiritual world, so too, Shabbos is that bridge, is that connection, is that unit that takes us from the physical world into the spiritual world. So on Shabbos, as we enter Shabbos, we're actually entering the time Beis HaMikdash. We're becoming part of Hashem's world, and that's why, yes, we introduced the first 2 stanzas talk about Shabbos, but afterwards we enter into a home, into a unit that we're in Hashem's world. And that's what happens on Shabbos. As if Shabbos and Yom Tov is the place in which the spiritual is being infused in a very open, profound, revealed way. So as part of the bracha of Yerushalayim and Beis HaMikdash, we mention Shabbos. I don't have a proof to this, but I believe when Mashiach comes, Shabbos will be experienced in a far more, exhilarating way, in a far more real way. We understand it and we do feel Shabbos, but it'll be more. And therefore I believe as part of the bracha of Yerushalayim, Beis HaMikdash, is the bracha of Shabbos. And as part of the mentioning of Shabbos is also the fact that we daven We daven that Hashem should have nechama, that Hashem should bring about the nechama of Tzion and the rebuilding of the Beis Mikdash. How much time we have? Okay, I don't know. You have to watch if everyone's still awake, but it looks like everyone's still awake, so we'll Bezrat Hashem. So now I want to tell you the last step, Bezrat Hashem. Last step. I asked you a question. Why is it that when I forget Al Nisim on Purim or on Chanukah, so that's when I'm given the opportunity to say Harachaman Hu Yaseh Lanu Nisim V'Niflois, that Hashem should give me the opportunity, Hashem should do for me miracles and wonders like it did for my forefathers. And as we asked, why is it that the only time that we actually, second time, twice, this is one of them, that I'm given up, that I have, that Chazal have set up, that I actually daven for miracles, is when I forget Al Nisim on Chanukah or Purim. Okay, follow me carefully. This is my Chiddush. I think this is true. I've said over many, many times, and different variations people have added, but I think this is the idea. Chanukah, especially Chanukah, Purim to a certain extent in the same sense. During 2 minutes of a historical background, when we came out of Egypt, we experienced open miracles, and we lived open miracles in a very real sense. Whatever happened, we were in the desert with clouds of glory around us, with Mon coming, but everything was miraculous. We entered into Eretz Yisrael. Yeshua led us, times of the Shoftim. Miracles stopped, open miracles stopped, but Hashem was there in a very real sense. When the first Beis Mikdash was built, in the first Beis Mikdash was built, daily, if you came to the Beis Mikdash, you could experience 10 open miracles, as the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos. I've got a raya proof from 2 or 3 midrashim that talk about, if you read Tanakh, right, Eliyahu did 8 open miracles, Tches Amesim, Elisha did 16. Half of Sefer Malachim is about the miracles that the great prophets did, but more than that. The Medrash is mashma, it seems, that if a person really, if Klal Yisrael really needed an open miracle, it was not unheard of or even an exaggeration to daven for an open miracle. As long as the first Beis Mikdash was there, as long as the Shekhinah was real, as long as we had prophets, which is what existed during the first Beis Mikdash, we were able to experience a very open, if that's the right word, relationship between Hashem and us. Hashem was real, was revealed. That's why it's made such a big fuss after the first Beis Mikdash was destroyed and Hanan, Mishael, Azariah were thrown into the furnace by Nebuchadnezzar, and 3 people were thrown in and they could see 4 people inside, as the Psukim talk about in Sefer Daniel. Malach Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, was together with Hanan, Mishael, Azariah inside the furnace, and they were saved. And everyone saw that, including Nebuchadnezzar. The Goyim saw open miracle. But it's made such a fuss because it was after the destruction of the first Beis Mikdash. That was a once-off open miracle. Daniel with the lions was a once-off open miracle. Then things slowly closed, and Hashem's open relationship, Hashem's open communication, interaction with us began to dwindle. Like we know from the story of Purim, there's no name of Hashem mentioned in the story of Purim. There was a closure. There was a closing up. We no longer heard Hashem speaking to us directly. Chanukah, even more so. It was closed. There was no open miracles. There had been a good 100 years, even 150 years. Shimon HaTzadik, maybe after that, by 100 years, there was no open miracles. But you had 12, 13 people fight against millions of the Greek Empire, and they were victorious. The message is, follow me here, the message is, externally, superficially, outwardly, we no longer see Hashem. We no longer see Hashem in the world around us. But we need to know that underneath, Hashem is there. When you forget something, it's really something, a representation of a subconscious. In the conscious world, you cannot ask for open miracles because we no longer live in a world where we have open miracles. And on Purim and on Chanukah, we say that we remember the miracles that Hashem did for us in those times. But when you forget Al Nisim on Chanukah and Purim, When you forget and you're part of the subconscious, you can daven for open miracles. Because in the subconscious, it's all there. And Hashem is there, and Hashem is really there. It's just concealed from the open. I think we're living through a time that we can appreciate the Wort, right? That externally, it's the outside is evil and the outside is harsh, and we don't see Hashem. But if you look carefully, or if you forget Al Nisim, you can daven for an open miracle. Arachaman hu yaseh lanu nisim liflois. We daven that Hashem should give us miracles when you forget. If you're benching, and as we said, you forget Ritzei or Ya'aleh v'Yavoy. If you're benching and you forget Ritzei, you forget to mention Shabbos in your benching. Now Shabbos is that deeper, more profound, more of that relationship, revelation that Hashem has towards us, or Ya'aleh v'Yavoy, similarly in that of Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, and that of Yom Tov. If you forget Ritzei, but you haven't yet started Hatova Meitiv, I'm in that world that I actually understand that Hashem is there. I just didn't see Him openly. But when I forget Ritzei, or I forget Ya'aleh v'Yavoy, Chazal enacted a special bracha where I can actually mention as a separate bracha. Bracha to Hashem v'Kol HaMelachim Asher Nosan Shabbosos L'Menucha. When you forget, but before Hatova Meitiv, you can put in a bracha about Shabbos, a bracha about Yom Tov. Hope I'm coming over clear, because in the subconscious, when you forget, you're able to touch deeper worlds, where in our unfortunate situation of today, we don't see those open miracles, only in the subconscious. But when you forget, you can actually add a bracha. I haven't seen anyone say this anywhere, but I think this is the understanding. This is the understanding. When you forget Ritzei or Ya'aleh v'Yavoy, you can add a bracha in. But a bracha, enactment, a proper takonos chazal for a bracha, I can say that Shabbos is there. We don't do it, right? Because you never forget Ritzei. But that's the setup. So just to summarize and take you where we've set up so far, because I see some people are falling asleep, is that there are 4 parts of benching, and there are 4 brachas. The first 3 are Doraisa, or Torah obligation, and the fourth one is Rabbanan. It's one theme. We asked the question, why do we need to go through the history of all about who we are, about food, about Eretz Yisrael, about Yerushalayim, Shabbos, Tova Meitiv? Why is that all connected? Because food represents the fact that we're keeping our neshama inside our guf. It means that there's a spiritual entity functioning within our physical bodies. And a staple diet of how that happens is bread. And therefore, when we have bread, and it's bread, today at least we still got remnants of that, right? Even if you don't eat bread during the week, on Shabbos, everyone has their 3 meals. Vast majority of people have their 3 meals on Shabbos, where you make a mention of this concept. The first bracha is Azones Olam, which I talked about when Moshe Rabbeinu set up, when we got the Mon. We're recognizing where all food comes from, where all taste comes from. And I thank Hashem in a very broad sense, how He's given food to the world. Second is in Eretz Yisrael, it's a place that I can experience the spiritual in the physical world, that I function. I even make a mention of Bris and Torah, because Hashem is part of that relationship, that connection, that reality is there. Third is that I mentioned Yisrael, Yerushalayim, Beis Hamikdash. Yes, Hashem is part of it, and the spiritual world is here. I'm waiting for that rebuilding to take place, even though I don't yet have it. As part of that mention, I talk about Shabbos and Yom Tov as well, because Shabbos and Yom Tov is part of that experience, like we spoke about L'Chadodi, is both Shabbos and Beis Hamikdash. If you forget to say Ritzei, you can add in a bracha about Shabbos or about Yom Tov. And lastly, the bracha that was enacted in Yavne because of Haruge Beitar, when Beitar was wiped out, but for 7 years the bodies pumped blood, and 7 years the bodies did not decompose, and after 7 years it was given permission to bury, because even though it looks externally as if it's death, it's chaos, and Hashem is not there, but if you look inside, if you look deeply, you'll see that Hashem is there, and Hashem is still behind us, and Hashem is still pumping life into us. I'll finish with what we say, that if you forget Al Nisim on Chanukah and Purim, those are the times where we live in the conscious world that we conscious in, where we don't see Hashem obviously around us. But when you forget, when you become part of the subconscious, then we have the right that Bizrat Hashem will be Zoicha, like it says, Arachman hu yaseh lanu nisim liflois, that Hashem should do for us miracles and wonders like it did for our forefathers. Thank you. Yes. Where is it? It does the power for Rosh Chodesh. I left that out on purpose because there's a discussion. We don't say that all the other brachas have a starting point and an end. Rosh Chodesh doesn't, but we do have it for Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is a Yom Tov. That I need time to explain how Rosh Chodesh is a Yom Tov. The Torah says that it used to be a Yom Tov of the Shvatim, and the times before the Chet HaEgel, Rosh Chodesh was a Yom Tov for each tribe. Right, every there is series on that. How every month has its own energies connected to its own tribe. Bezrat Hashem, when Mashiach comes back, that Yom Tov will come back. We've got remnants of that Yom Tov. I'll tell you a vort. Yeah, you asked the question. It's next week, so I thought I'll mention it. When Shabbos falls out on Rosh Chodesh, so it's a strange setup. We changed the nusach of Musaf. We've got a different wording for Musaf, right? Different wording for Musaf. And, Ato Yitzarata. Which tune do we use? Yom Tov tune. The halacha says Yom Tov tune, not Shabbos tune, Yom Tov tune. Now listen to the wording very carefully. Ato Yitzarata Lamcha, Ha'avta Isanu, V'ratzita Banu, V'ramtanu B'kol Hashonot, V'kedashtanu Mitzvotecha. That sounds like Yom Tov. It sounds like Yom Tov. Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, it's Yom Tov. Okay, we need time to explain that. When Shabbos falls out, when Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, I've got a touch of something of what's going to be in the future. During the week, what should be, I grew up in the Yekisha community in South Africa, which is what the old minhag was as far as I remember. Even though I asked one or two Yekas, they said that they told me they couldn't remember, but I remember if I'm correct. The nusach on a weekday Rosh Chodesh is that you start in the beginning with a normal weekday, in the middle it's Yom Tov, and at the end it's weekday. It's only on Shabbos that the entire thing, it starts with Shabbos, and then the entire thing afterwards is Yom Tov. Shabbos Rosh Chodesh is the time that I touch into a Yom Tov reality. Okay, I need more time to explain that. Any other questions? Yeah.
I wanted to ask, if someone does not happen to eat the bread, then
they're missing the opportunities of life.
that's all.
Bensching is an opening of tremendous amount of bracha. But if you can't, you can't. Saying if medically a person can't, then you can't medically. But if
the smaller, what I call the smaller benching.
The alamichia. Yeah, alamichia you can have, that's a smaller one, that's a ma'ain. It's a little bit, it's something of, but it's not the same. It's not the same. Okay, that's, if a person can't medically, he can't. But if he can medically, then for sure, this is your opening into the world of bracha.
But they said that even if you don't have the bread, if you have a full meal, you can still bench.
You can still say bro nefashos or alamichia, but benching, as in the benching we're describing over here, which is the 4 brachas, you can only have if you have bread. You can bench the other ones. Alamichia, Rashi, many Rishonim hold that alamichia is the raisa, but the full bracha, so to speak, of benching that we're discussing over here is the bread. Okay. Shkoyach, thank you. It's been a pleasure.